What's up, people? Welcome into the Starting Five. This is the New Year edition. He's Coach Nick. I'm Ben. Coach, Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you. Happy New Year to you. It's been a crazy ride for 2013.
Has been a little bit, and I think it's going to get a little bit crazier in 2014. The Knicks are possibly on the trade block again. This time, maybe Rajon Rondo could be a possibility. Brian Windhorst of ESPN is reporting that the Knicks hope Rondo is going to force the Celtics for a trade between sometime now and 2015. Is there any possible scenario you see working where Rajon Rondo becomes a Knick?
I don't know. This whole notion of forcing a trade is kind of weird to me as well. I don't know if Danny Ainge is the kind of guy that sort of bends to the will of somebody else for a bad deal.
Right.
So, I mean, certainly if they want to tank and they have Rondo healthy, he will hurt those chances. So I wouldn't be surprised if they trade him, whether or not Rondo wants to force a trade. And the only question now is, do they want to deal with the Knicks or not, who don't have very many assets to give him anyway?
Yeah, I agree. I think the only real connection here is the fact that Carmelo Anthony likes playing with him, that there's a connection there. He might want to recruit him a little bit. But I just don't think the Knicks have enough to acquire Rondo. You know, who would they send back? The better plan for the Knicks is realize this is a lost season. Start trading away some of the guys, as many of the guys as you can, and start focusing on the 2015 free agent class when you can get a LaMarcus Aldridge, Marcus Saul, Roy Hibbert, Tony Parker, Kevin Love. And listen, Parker just probably not going anywhere, and I think he'll end his career in San Antonio. But those are the guys that you focus on. Don't try and trade any more assets. You have very little already. I don't think Boston's going to take the bait on that move.
I agree, and I think that the assets they have, the guys they would want to move, like Stoudemire, they're just unmovable. Although I would have probably said that about Bargnani, and this year he moved him. So you never know how it's going to work. But I don't know. I don't see this notion of like Carmelo Anthony says he wants something, and then he's just going to get it because he wants it. I don't follow that logic real well.
I don't follow it as well. Our second story here in the Starting Five. Russell Westbrook's going to be out until after the All-Star break. And now that he's out, the West, I think it's a little bit more interesting. Oklahoma City, obviously, with the best record in the West right now at 25-5. Portland in the division's right behind them at 25-7. When you look at how the division and also the Western Conference breaks down, which team do you think benefits most with Westbrook's injury?
Well, you have to imagine the Spurs are going to get a little bit of a break there because they're going to want to rest their starters a lot and try and coach as much as they can. And certainly with another team that's not as full strength, that'll help them. And so that's one area. Maybe even Houston can kind of slide in there as well if they don't win as many games. But listen, the Thunder don't seem to be missing too much of a beat without him. Yeah,
no, you're right. And I think having a little bit of experience last year, just sort of getting sort of the notion of sort of what it's like, I think helped them a lot. I think it's easy to say Portland just because they're right behind them in the division. I'm going to throw out a little bit of a wild card team for you, Coach. I think Minnesota, this helps them out right now. They're out of the playoff spot. I believe either the number 9 or number 10 seed. They're also in the division. They play Oklahoma City twice before the All-Star break. Kevin Love's playing out of his mind. He didn't get the call the other night. But I think Minnesota still has a run left in them to grab the number 8 spot, and I think a couple games here and there can make a difference.
Yeah, they've had a crazy difficult schedule to start the season. So
yes,
that will probably balance out a little bit because remember, your ills are always cured. You're only one game away from playing a really bad team in the NBA, and that can get you going. So they are better than what they've shown, but the first thing I went to look at when I was trying to figure out what was wrong with the Wolves was their schedule, and it was 8th ranked on B-Ball Reference, and I think ESPN's Power Rankings has their schedule even tougher than that. So that's a real issue for them. And if they can get a couple of easy games under their belt to get going, I would see them sliding up a lot higher.
And I said at the beginning of the year, I think Rick Adelman's going to be the coach of the year. It's looking a little sketchy right now with the way that Portland's played, but maybe they come around a little bit more. Paul Gasol might be on the move, Coach, and we've heard that rumor for the last 3 years. ESPN's reporting that he might be on the block for none other than Andrew Bynum, who at the moment is being asked to stay very, very far away from all things Cavaliers and possibly even Cavaliers coaches. We can get into that another time. So even though Bynum has his head in the clouds, I think this allows LA to get under the luxury tax if they make this move. Lakers would need to get some pieces back to make this work, but is there any way that you see Bynum going back to LA?
I think that there's no value to having Bynum. He simply can't play. His knees are shot. And it doesn't look like he's got the ability to really do much. I know he's had a couple of moments there where he's done okay, but Here's a guy that it can't give you more than like 4 or 5 minutes in a row simply because the pain is too great. So I think he's pretty toxic. I think he's toxic in the locker room. So, the only reason why any other team in the league would want to touch this guy is simply for that cap relief or to be able to cut him or whatever they're going to do. It seems like a big waste of time.
Right. If you're the Lakers, the ability to save cap room is really the only reason, in my opinion, that you make this move. I also hate this for Cleveland because they're 2.5 games out of the last playoff spot. Maybe you get a little bit more revenue if you go ahead and make the number 7 or the number 8 seed in this awful, awful Eastern Conference. But, I mean, if it were up to me, I'd let them tank and get a better player in the draft. Now, they took Anthony Bennett number 1, so I don't know how much they trust their drafting all the time. But the Lakers aren't going to win this year. And if they think Kobe is healthy and ready to contend the year after, maybe they get Gasol on a better deal for a couple more years with Kobe's deal to coincide. And like you said, you're right. Bynum may not even want to play basketball anymore, let alone whether or not he can play basketball.
And I think that Powell is pretty much washed up too. I'm sorry, but he just doesn't look like the same Powell everyone thinks and hopes he can be anymore. And he's such a liability on defense that would be a wash. It's a huge contract. They got to pay him, even though I think it expires. But I don't think Powell has the kind of value that the Lakers would hope as well. Let's not forget, even though they did choose Anthony Bennett, the Cavs did also pick Kyrie Irving, and that was a good pick. So
they did.
It's not always a lose situation for them.
That's true. Yeah, when you have the number 1 pick 2 out of the last 4 or 5 years, and you come across one good player, I'll give you a pat on the back. Congratulations to the Cavs. Toronto Raptors coach. They're in first place in an awful Atlantic division, but they are in first place. They've been 7-3 since they traded Rudy Gay to Sacramento. We were talking about Zach Lowe of Grantland wrote earlier about sort of what happens next for Ujiri and whether or not this changes the direction of the team this year. So if the Raptors are still in first place by the time the trade deadline rolls around, what do you imagine that they would do?
I don't think that they can really. I think they want to build a winning culture, and I don't think they're going to suddenly tank then. I think they had their chance earlier to do it, and now that they're doing better, I just think they're going to roll, and they're going to see how well DeRozan does. This is a lot like Major League, the ownership wants to tank and lose and get and here we are with, I haven't figured out who Dornan is yet for this team, but certainly maybe Rudy Gay was Dornan. But at any rate, they are really, it's a testament to, ball movement, and there's that euphoria after a trade and new players come in. I would suspect it'll settle down. They're not going to win 70% of their games the rest of the year.
Right.
But I suspect, that they're going to have they'll be in the playoffs.
Look, and I've been saying for a long time that if you think you're a tanking team, why go against that type of logic when you know what you are long term? But I think I'm going to go a little bit against my own logic so far and say, you know what? If you're in first place at that point, contend. And Lowe points out that the Magic really like Terrence Ross and that maybe Aaron Flalo could be available for the right mix of guys. They've been trying to shop Kyle Lowry. They haven't gotten a good enough return for Ujiri to make that move. So, I mean, if teams are being stupid to acquire decent Raptor players and get a lot back in return for Toronto, then they would have made those moves, but they haven't. So I guess at this point, go and have some fun.
Yeah, I don't think that Lowry, like Pau Gasol, has the exact worth they would hope he does. He's a nice player, and he's probably in that sort of weird range where you might as well just keep him. He does well enough, and the salary's there that it's like, I don't think you're going to get that much better return, for him. So it's almost like just roll with it.
Final one for today, Coach. We're going to do a little bit of a discussion on Rudy Gay. And the Raptors, as we said before, they've gone 7-3 in their last 10 since they traded him. But you just did a breakdown on the Kings and Spurs. And Rudy Gay is helping the Kings get better. It may not indicate it right now in the record, but it's become evident in both the way that DeMarcus Cousins and Isaiah Thomas are playing right now.
Without question, we did the breakdown. We showed some stats, and in the very short sample size, you can see that both Isaiah Thomas and DeMarcus Cousins across the board improved their numbers. Now, one reason is that Isaiah Thomas is now starting, which was sort of our big thing when I did the Kyrie Irving versus Isaiah Thomas breakdown in the summer, and everyone wanted to put me on a pitchfork. But, it's pretty clear that Isaiah Thomas, with those extra minutes, is a legitimate top point guard in the NBA. And Rudy Gay gives them just an extra influx of talent. And they have Derek Williams now, who is probably going to start moving into more minutes to take away from Jason Thompson. And that's going to help them improve.
I think so, too. And I look at the power forward position as really their main area of need. And I think one thing that could be very beneficial to them is they don't need another scorer. They're going to put up points because Gay and Williams and Isaiah Thomas and Cousins can do all that. You have McLemore as a good developing outside shooter. But if you shore up that floor, get a defensive rebounding monster, I think they're a playoff team next year.
I agree. I like Jason Thompson. He has something there, but he's not producing on the end on the rebounding level.
Right.
And he's just sort of kind of gotten stuck at a plateau here. So if they could get something for him for a really tough-minded defensive forward, they need another guy off the bench who can produce in the front court. Right now, they're doing okay in the backcourt. They kind of have Salmons. I don't think that Thornton is an answer either. He might have to either get less minutes or get moved if they can find something for him. But that they have a really good nucleus here. They just need another player and a half, and they'd be in business.
I think you're right. I think for the first time in a long time, we can start to see that the future actually looks bright for Sacramento. So, Coach, once again, Happy New Year. And as I like to say, better to watch the ball drop than to drop the ball or to watch your balls drop. So enjoy the new year. We will talk to you soon. Thanks, everybody, for listening and for tuning in.
You got it. No flipping.